Oh, it's something I just wanted to address, which has been, talked about with fair comment within the Combatives self-protection fraternity for a long time, is the employment of sparring, or lack thereof, in many places that practice combatives type training. Now, I think that's a misnomer that people think that, because many reality-based methods of self-defense, reality-based methods of self-protection, and combatives that I've always been involved with, all cross-train. And by cross-train, I mean they will usually have a good familiarity and the cultivation of an athletic base from more martial sporting platforms, whether that's boxing, Thai boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, judo, grappling of some kind, or MMA. In which case, now when they practice their craft outside of skill development, they will spar. And of course, sparring or free play, where you're trying to get the better of me, I'm trying to get the better of you, is a great way to test if what you're doing works or not, right? Now people say, oh, they don't spar in combatives, or in UC, they don't spar. That's a big red flag for me. Well, why the fuck is it a big red flag for you if you have a complete understanding of the overall? So a complete understanding of the overall, first of all, is what you're training for in a combatives engagement. You are training to counter violence quickly, preferably before it's been unleashed upon you. That can include finding yourself in a fucking blood and snot fight that's going back and forward, but ideally you want to be first and keep going and get it done so it's done before he gets to do what he wants to do to you. That's what combatives is. So combatives is an asymmetrical model from violence. It's a one-sided beating. It's me, fuck you, finished. What it isn't is a reciprocal exchange, or a test where one finds out who's better than the other, right? Which would be more of a dueling sense. So if you look at the difference between, what I would consider to be a knife fight, that would be somebody ambushing somebody with a knife, as opposed to a knife duel where there's this reciprocal exchange back and forward. So to me, sparring is a reciprocal exchange. Of course, that's what it is, and that's how it's designed. So it's my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. Until you see in competitive martial methods when someone will get caught with a shot, hurt, and then the other one will capitalise on what he's just created, and finish quickly. But before that, there's this feel out, I feel you, boom, boom, you feel me, and then boom, oh, I catch you, and then that can be finished. So it can turn into a very asymmetrical dynamic in order to win quickly. But it starts off very symmetrical. It's my turn, your turn. And that's what sparring is. And sparring is very, very valuable for the cultivation of certain attributes. Namely, learning how to track and hit a moving target. Learning how to be a moving target so that you can avoid getting hit. Feeling what it feels like to get hit and manhandled, and feeling what it feels like to hit somebody and manhandle somebody else. That doesn't want to be touched, so there's that non-compliancy. But if you watch the way most sparring is done, it's done very light, very light, very half-hearted, just touch and play, and that's a good way to develop certain skills, But really, to me, in my mind, sparring wants to be like a round would be in boxing. Whereas by the end of this round, I'm doing better than you, and that may be because I've knocked you down, knocked you out, or I've just hit you more times without getting hit. So of course there's the competitive sporting element to it, but it is geared toward one person winning that round. And of course the arena that I train for is the pavement arena, which isn't 2-3 minute rounds, which isn't a 5 to 15 minute roll on the mat in the cage. It's a fucking 5-second tear up. And who goes first with the most in that dynamic is the one that usually comes out the best, right? Well, that ain't sparring, is it? That's a non-reciprocal exchange. My question is, how do you spar that? You can't. So what do you do? So what you do is you practice simulation and scenario type training. We can get to the point where you're using very good role players in kit that know how to wear kit and feed energy effectively. By energy, I mean aggression. You know, aggression, speed, power, violence, but also dialogue, emotional energy, which is what's going to be in the arena of the street. So a boxing round or a sparring round comes from a sporting platform. Two consensual people, touch gloves, move around, and there we go. Real violence happens from an emotion platform, where first of all I've been robbed of my choice of being here, so it's non-consensual, and I just want to go home and you want to give me a problem, and that's created adrenaline and a fearful response in me. So anything I do is coming from an emotional platform. Very fucking different. I don't have time to play an exchange in an emotional platform. You've got to get this done quickly before this fucker kills you, right? So you can't spar that. So here's what I do understand. I understand if you have a combatives group that does simulation scenario training as it's intending to do. So inside the simulation scenario training, it could be ambush, it would be spontaneity, it would be done where preemption is taken away from you necessarily, and now you have to fight out the dynamic. But what you're quickly looking to do is hit and keep hitting until you get the upper hand. And the person in the kit will only continue to feed you energy and hit you and stop you and stifle you and take you down if you can, if your response is ineffective. But if you're hitting fucking hard, and that person's going to reel, and you're going to continue before they can recover, well, they're going to give you that kind of energy response also. And you will manipulate the environment, and you also will do what you can to impair the combative trainee before he fights. So you might pre-fatigue, various sort of things that you might do, so that he can only start in an already fatigued, disruptional state, and now he's got to fight, which kind of replicates how you will feel when adrenaline hits you, and now you're forced to fight. So the model that you're practicing for is to dealing with real violence from an asymmetrical point of view in the street. So the primary of your training must reflect that that's what you're doing. And sparring doesn't reflect that. So when you get people saying within, because understand within the combatives fraternity, like anywhere else, you know, there's good and not so good. And some of the not so good will say something like, oh, you can't spar what we do, it's too dangerous. Well, in a sense, that's right. You can't spar in non-reciprocal exchange because someone's getting hurt. But at the same time, it sounds a bit of a cop-out reason for you not to spar. You know, and maybe people use that cop-out reason because they don't want to spar. Because sparring is a different stimulus and uncomfortable to them. Who knows? So what's the answer? Here's the answer. The answer is cross-training. The answer is spar in a sparring cross-training environment. Roll in that environment. Lift weights explosively in that environment. Work your conditioning in that environment. And train your combatives in this specific environment. You should cross-train. So when people say, oh, they don't spar in UC, that's not actually true. Because if you look at the peer level of, you know, the guys in UC, and there's many, everybody's got a sporting platform. Everybody's got an athletic base. Everyone can punch and use good pugilistic skills. Everyone knows some method of punching and kicking or striking, stand up, and everyone can roll on the ground. So who said we don't do it? We do do it. But it's not part of UC, because that's not what UC is training for. It's a tool, an attribute, like any other method of cross-training, whether it's conditioning, whether it's breath work, whether it's ice cold water therapy, whether it's weight training, whether it's plyometrics, whether it's high intensity intervals, whether it's grappling, whether it's pugilism, whether it's fucking Thai boxing, whether it's lift away, whether what else I train outside of my UC curriculum is for my attributes, is to make me better. So UC or combatives training is for fight development. You want to get better at that? We then look at skill, tool and attribute development by cross-training and other things. So the answer is you don't spar in combatives per se because you can't spar in non-reciprocal exchange. But you should cross-train, which is where you should spar, because there's many attributes to be had that can cross over for sure. So hand-eye coordination, footwork, timing, distancing, hitting a moving target, trying to avoid getting hit as you hit, etc., etc. And plus, you know, sparring with somebody that can spar. I'm not talking the silly touch shit that you do, and I'm talking about getting there progressively hard sparring. You're fucking trying to, knock me out or choke me out if we're rolling, and I'm trying to do the same to you. If you start to get that when you're working with good level people that are pushing your envelope, that will elicit an adrenal response in you. Very, very useful. Very useful for desensitization. If you look at the old book Fear Control by Jeff Thompson, he drew this pyramid of fears that you want to box off one at a time. I think public speaking was at the bottom, fear of spiders, and then it went up and it was like sparring was up there high. But of course it was before real physical confrontation in the street, because there's real fucking consequences, right? And if there's real consequences of death, you can't play at that shit. I can't play a reciprocal exchange in the street and allow you to show me what you've got, because what you've got might take me out of the game for a minute. So understand that they're different. Combatives training for fight development is about how do I counter violence quickly? How do I end this threat? Cross training in any other thing that would also involve sparring is for betterment of my physical ability, my attributes, my prowess, all those things that I talked about, as well as an enjoyment thing. So yes, it does belong, but understand where it belongs. And yes, we do it, but do I tout it in my teaching? Well, no, it's not part of UC. It's cross-training. If you want me to do you a video on what do I cross-train in, well then you would see very, very sort of disciplines that allow me to attain a variety of basis of improvement that give me an overall package. But if you're training UC, you're training specifically for dealing with violence quickly. So that's where sparring belongs inside of that.